Hey, what's up? It's Vladimir. Today is 29th day of my commitment. I'm talking to the camera every day for 10-15 minutes, practicing my English, training my pronunciation, developing my ability to avoid fillers, to use perfect grammar, and just improve communication skills. Last few days I was in a kind of chaos. I was sick and I didn't want to do anything in terms of study and learning. And when I recorded these videos last few days, I was saying one day I was talking about a book which I wanted to write in my native language. Another day, yesterday, I was talking about random self-talk, about my new idea to shift my self-talk to video journal, which is just talking about what's going on, talking mostly about actions instead of trying to make plans or trying to discuss certain ideas which I learn. But now it gets better, and I think all of that was a mistake. I'm ready to admit that and say that whatever I said yesterday, day before yesterday, it was a kind of disturbance. Now I want to get back to everything I was working on for these 25, 26 days before I got sick. And I want to continue talking about communication. So I'm reading a book now, which is Communication Works by Terry Gamble and Michael, or Michelle. Yeah, Terry and Michelle Gamble. I like this book. I read it first a few years ago in 2019, in January of 2019. And I remember this book helped me to begin this new speaking club in Innovational Cultural Center. I remember I gave a lecture there, and I wouldn't say that I based my lecture on this book, no, but to prepare for this lecture, I used the book and my nonverbal communication, my ability to make a presentation. It was basically kind of, the whole lecture was a kind of work after, like, when you go to the university, you study, and then at the end of the year, you must give an exam. And for me, it was kind of exam. So the lecture was an exam, which I gave after reading this book. Yeah, and then this book was lying on my shelf for a couple of years, and recently I decided that I'm gonna read it again and go slowly through it. It's not just reading. I decided that I will read it and speak about the concepts which are there. And last week, before I got sick, I was developing the basic elements of communication. So I read it like in the very beginning of this book. There's this concept, elements of communication, people, messages, channels, noise, context, feedback, and effect. So then I got through it. I was thinking about it a lot during that week. And now I'm gonna proceed forward. New concept. The first was elements of communication. Now it's characteristics of communication. There are two major characteristics. Communication is a dynamic process. What does it mean? Like, all these elements, they constantly interact with each other. It's not stable. Whenever there's a communication, it goes, like even now. For example, I'm speaking, and while I'm speaking, I develop my ideas, and these ideas influence myself, they influence the way how I talk, and they determine what am I gonna say next. So every time when I develop a speech, there's a dynamic process. I'd like to think about it in a way that, like, every time when we communicate, it's a new opportunity, it's a new way of expressing yourself. It's not you memorize 1 or 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 speeches, and then you give these speeches at different events. It's like it's always new, it's always dynamic. Every time you have to adapt to different environment, different people, different situations, you have to learn to express yourself through different emotional states, different mindsets. And this is it. So you learn that it's a dynamic process. It changes you, and it also changes people with whom you communicate. And it's very important to learn how other people affect you. When you talk to people, you may see that some people make you feel sad, or you may feel silly, stupid, embarrassed, and avoiding those communication which make you weaker is very important. And of course, finding those communications which make you stronger. In my case, I would say that I got through lots of breaking my social circles in my life. So I had many different social circles. And eventually I learned that what makes me stronger is like reading books, watching lectures, not communicating at all. And it was a hard thing to break relationships with different people, but eventually when I understood how they affected me, I was able to break them with no big effort. So it was kind of easy. But the first thing I had to understand was, okay, this particular relationships, it makes me weaker, and I can't do anything to improve it. I'm trying to do something, it doesn't work, there's no way. It's better to break it and start working on something else. Anyway, so dynamic process. Another characteristic of communication is that communication is irreversible. And what else? I forgot. Let me see. Irreversible, unrepeatable, which is almost the same. Yeah, but it's funny concepts like unrepeatable, irreversible. Unrepeatable means basically that you can step in one river twice. So you can't repeat any communication when it's done. You may try to do something similar, but it's like it's different people, different situations, different times, different contexts, and therefore to repeat the same communication is impossible. But it's like, what's the point? Why it's important? It's unrepeatable and irreversible. So you can't, when you said something, just when you said one word, you can't just go back and say, look, I didn't say that. You already said something. Be careful what you're talking about, which words you use. Yeah, so in a relationship, that's kind of, immediately seen especially when there are some fights and you just say certain things which you don't like to say. Which offend your partner, which make you a rude person. And then they affect your relationship, and you can't do anything. You can't just go back and say, listen, let's just forget about it. Yeah, it's like it's impossible to forget. And that's, well, I told you recently that I was in a relationship for 10 months, and now it's over. And one of the reasons why it's over is poor communication. We, with my girlfriend, had extremely poor communication, and we both blamed each other, even though she was saying, "No, I never blame you. It's my feeling." But yeah, it's like it was a problem. She couldn't admit that she blamed me because she believed that no, blaming is something bad, and nobody should do that. And like she continued uh, blaming me, but she refused to admit that, and it was yeah, and it made all communications like no, we said so many nasty things to each other, and we couldn't handle it. I mean, it was one of the biggest problem, and we didn't find the solution. And I was surprised since I was studying communication for years, and still I can't do anything to make it work. If there's, well, maybe it just was doomed relationships from the very beginning. I don't know. Doesn't matter. So the point is characteristics of communication. Once again, communication is a dynamic process. Communication is unrepeatable and irreversible. So whatever you said it. Next time, if you wanna, for example, it was something negative, and you can change it. You can go ahead and just develop something else, develop new positive things which will reduce the damage made by whatever was said before. Anyway, I think it's interesting concepts. It's not enough just to remember these words and say them, whenever there's a talk about communication. I like to think about these concepts on my own. Now, of course, I didn't have time on this week to think deeply about what it means unrepeatable and irreversible and dynamic process. I read just an article. There are a few paragraphs, and I didn't memorize them. There was some basic understanding, and now I'm trying to develop my understanding. And what I'm doing here, it's like I'm not teaching you what is communication. I'm just trying to put my thoughts together in terms of understanding these models, these ideas from the book. And I do that, like what I'm doing right now, I usually do just in my daily routine. So I might go somewhere in the street, and I may start thinking like that. Not aloud, but like in my head. And, okay, communication, let's go and develop an idea about irreversible. What does it mean? How would you explain it? And then I think, create short explanation with example, maybe a few examples. And then, that's cool. That sounds great. And then if it's a long, I have just 1 minute to finish. If it's a long concept, if there are 5 pages written about this concept, I go back, see once again what was written there, and think how well I could explain, how well I could develop these ideas by myself, and what could I add to make it better. So it's like one of the way of learning foreign language, basically. So you learn to think about things which are important for you, which you may apply for your life, and you just talk about it, talk talk if there's nobody to talk to. You just talk to yourself, recording videos on camera, thinking about it aloud, or just thinking. Just thinking doesn't work so well in comparison with thinking aloud, because now, see, I have to talk for 15 minutes and I developed certain ideas. If I was thinking in my head, I wouldn't think a lot. There were no words, there were just images, and it's not thinking. Thinking is verbal. So when you are able to talk about one thing, and even if you didn't say anything important, doesn't matter. If you maintain 15-minute speech without being disturbed by something else, if you know, okay, there's one thing I'd like to talk about it. Even if you are disturbed, doesn't matter. The point is to maintain a long speech and learn to do it better. If you're able to talk for 10 minutes in any situation, it's really amazing. If you're able to talk for 15 minutes, well, you must understand whom are you talking to. If it's your girlfriend and she doesn't like it, probably you'll just learn to talk for 15 minutes to yourself. And it's also important. Okay, I think it's enough for today. Communication, irreversible, unrepeatable, dynamic process, characteristics of communication. Next time I'm going to talk about something else. See you next time. Bye.